Some of the anthropic constants that the scientists talk about are the oxygen level. That is, it's at 21% in the atmosphere. If it was at 25%, fires would erupt spontaneously. If it was at 15%, humans would suffocate. Atmospheric transparency is another thing that scientists talk about. That is, if there was less solar radiation, then there'd be less radiation to survive. If there was more, we'd be bombarded by too much radiation. And so having that perfectly balanced in nature is something that many scientists have concluded must have developed for the purpose of our growth and sustainability. A moon is another example. That is the gravitational force of the moon. If it was greater, the effects on tides and Earth's rotation would be deadly. If it was less, orbital changes would cause catastrophic climate instability. So the fact that the moon and Earth gravitational pull is so precise and so well balanced, it allows us to live in this very narrow window that we find on this Earth that sustains life. And again, with carbon dioxide, we talked a little bit about oxygen. Carbon dioxide is all in the news, and the recognition by scientists that a little change in carbon dioxide ends up causing huge changes in temperatures in our climate. And so scientists recognize that if carbon dioxide was higher, as it purportedly continues to be getting, that there'd be runaway greenhouse gases. And of course, if it was lower, we'd have dead plants. And so the atmosphere seems to be completely balanced for life on this planet. Let me spend a little bit of time talking about the moral argument for the existence of God. And that argument has to do with anthropologists noticing that in just about every culture in this world, there seem to be very common standards. Most communities are forbid murder, that is, murder within the community. Most communities forbid stealing of other people's properties, and down the line, it's frowned upon in most cultures to lie. And so anthropologists have noticed a common moral code throughout cultures, and it was Hume, an Enlightenment philosopher, who stated that you cannot draw an ought from an is. And so those folks that believe that there is continually an ought, that is, it's difficult to talk in terms of what we should or should not be doing. It's difficult not to feel like we've got obligations around different moral constraints or moral values without understanding that morality must be set. And if it is set, that is, if it goes beyond our opinions, then there must be a higher authority than our opinions to implement moral codes or moral values. And so that's the idea behind the moral argument for the existence of God. Another argument for the existence of God is our reasoning, our rationality. Most people would admit that if there's an argument whose source came from irrational sources, that argument should not be maintained. And so we look to reason, to rationality. And as Gaylord Simpson said, in a quote in an earlier video, we must assume, even though there's no evidence, according to natural laws, that our reason corresponds to reality. We have to assume that. And if it does, then where does our reason come from? If in fact our reason comes from an accidental combination of chemicals or neuronic synapses in our brains, then why should we at all believe that our reason corresponds with anything? Wouldn't those accidental combinations of chemicals and synapses be from an irrational source? I mean, they would be accidental. And so why should we believe in what our five senses reveals to us? When we look around the universe, we understand that it's not man who develops mathematics. For example, it is man that discovers mathematical principles. It's not man that develops scientific laws. It is man who recognizes the laws of science and physics. It's not man that has decided that notes should be a third apart to develop chords. That's just the way it sounds good. And so there seems to be a very common, constant beauty and preciseness behind mathematics, behind science, behind music, you might even say behind art, that we can recognize and we don't determine on our own. So the idea behind the moral and rational arguments for the existence of God is that primarily what we do is discover what the universe is like. We don't determine it. We discover our moral codes, our values, the messages from our conscience. We are not the final arbitrators. And as I've said a few times in this series, if we are, then all we have is our opinions. And one opinion is as good as another. One man might decide that it is in the best interest of himself and his community to commit genocide, and that's his opinion. And other folks will say, well, no, that's not right. But that's their opinion. And who's the one who determines what opinion is better than another? Who's the one that determines what truth is more closely related to reality than another? It is all the rage these days, and has been for a long time, but particularly since the 60s, and Joseph Fletcher wrote Moral Relativity, to say that you have your truth, and that's good. It's not my truth. Everybody has their own truth. It's important to find your own truth. But there is no argument about anything if we cannot agree that what we are arguing about is a truth beyond our own individual opinions. And if that's what we are doing, then the question has to be, who developed a truth beyond our own individual opinions? And if there is a truth giver beyond our opinions, then there must be something beyond us. And so that's the idea behind the moral and rational arguments for the existence of God. A great summary for both of those arguments is found in C.S. Lewis's work called Miracles, and once again, I would recommend it. And my hope is that some of these arguments will cause folks to spend time researching on their own in regards to what makes the most sense of what we've been talking about regarding rational worldviews.